any kind of formal A/B testing. I'd kind of done a bit of testing of different kind of options for things here and there, but I'd never really tried to launch a proper experimentation program with kind of clear goals and really kind of more like methodical thinking behind our testing and our A/B testing program. So I wanted to do this test really just to help alleviate anyone who's thinking about A/B testing or is starting out on that journey, or potentially recognizes that it's a big part of their role potentially in the future and they just want to learn a bit about it, to just kind of alleviate some of that fear by kind of myth busting a little bit on some common myths that definitely scared me a lot before I started, and then also just give a really clear and quite simple way that you could get started with A/B testing, even if you don't have a full team behind you or a full kind of machine behind you that's going to do your A/B testing. There's actually some really simple ways that you can get started with A/B testing, which can yield some really great results and make you look very impressive as well when you come to your senior stakeholders with some really juicy data. And I think this is not just relevant to product. The team that I was working in when we were A/B testing was kind of a fully cross-functional team. Hannah, who I mentioned, our senior designer, we worked very much in partnership on all of the tests that we had, but also we had some of our engineering team involved in that, and then other like senior stakeholders from our marketing team having quite a kind of active role in that kind of mission team geared towards A/B testing. So yeah, I hope it's useful. A tiny bit about me just to kick off. Like Dee said, I'm a product manager. I've worked in product for about 7 years now. I started out as a business analyst before that. I spent kind of most of my early career at Trainline, which was amazing for me. It's a kind of big company with a very rich product and design culture. So it gave me loads of great learnings when I was kind of still quite junior. I then transitioned to work at a health tech startup called Pelago that helped people with addiction, particularly opioid addiction in the US, which was incredibly different from Trainline, but gave me some really a really great opportunity to do some really impactful product work. And now I'm currently at BBC Maestro working. I was working mostly in the growth team up until about mid this year. I'm kind of transitioning now over to B2B. But that time in that growth team and leading the growth squad was really where I started testing and A/B testing and trying to get myself really upskilled in A/B testing. So, like I said, I'm going to start this talk really just trying to kind of bust any myths that you may have heard, you may have read, people may have whispered to you about A/B testing, and some of the things that I think I thought were very important before I actually started A/B testing that actually I don't believe are true. And the first one of those is that when you're A/B testing things, when you're being quite methodical in your testing, opinions don't matter. I definitely don't believe this, and it might be a little bit controversial. People say that A/B testing removes all the guesswork, removes people's opinions, removes assumptions, but actually I think that A/B testing is a tool that you can add to your toolkit, but your opinions, your experience working with customers, your experience talking to customers, the ideas that you have, all of that data, if you like, as well as the A/B testing is what makes kind of a full testing framework really, really powerful, as opposed to kind of just disregarding people's opinions and feelings and their experience before that. I also think that you've worked really hard, and people like me, people like you have worked really hard to get our experience and get our product sense, get our UX sense about what works and what doesn't work. And actually, we shouldn't disregard that just because we're getting this new tool that is more methodical. And I guess in some ways it's more scientific when you get into kind of the data and the statistics and all of that stuff. A/B testing really should allow you to scrutinize your opinions and your ideas more, but it shouldn't kind of completely replace that part of your work. And I think sometimes that's where A/B testing falls short, where people kind of do ignore their product sense and their experience and just go kind of really scientific with it. You are working, lots of you are probably working on products used by real people. And we have to sometimes engage the part of our brain that is more human and more kind of geared towards just creating really nice products when we're doing A/B testing. The second myth, which is a tricky one to swallow, it definitely was for me, but you're only testing successfully if your tests are winning. I definitely, when I first started out on my A/B testing journey, I thought that all my tests would win because I had loads of great ideas and I knew exactly what the customer problems were. So I would just solve them, test them, prove that I was right, and it would all be amazing. But actually, a lot of the things that I first started testing when I was A/B testing were so small and maybe directed at such a small user group that actually the impact was not that dramatic. And a lot of my tests, although they weren't outright failures in that, like, the control version didn't win and the version that I wanted to test didn't lose, they were often just flat. And that is what you most of the time will see in A/B testing, particularly if you're testing very subtle things. You'll quite often just not see any impact, positive or negative, and that can feel quite disheartening, particularly when you're really excited to experiment with new ideas and actually you realize that the things that you thought would have a really big impact don't, and you need to switch focus. The most important thing about this one for me is that you must always try and consider the outcomes of a test before you test. So asking yourself questions like, what if this test is flat? What if there is no impact in this test? What does that mean for me? What should I do with that result? And then that will enable you, when you do get that result, to take the learnings from the test, even if it fails or it's flat. It's also really important, I think, with this one to kind of build that culture into your community at work, and definitely with kind of instill that a lot in your stakeholders that you're working with. They will often, if they haven't got much experience with experimentation or A/B testing, they will often think, like I did when I first started, that a test either wins or loses, and that's kind of it. And either when it wins or it loses, we can take the learnings from either of those. But like I said, when the results are flat, and by that I mean that there's no discernible difference or statistical difference between the variants, that's where you need to dig a bit harder for the learnings, look at maybe some other metrics, and also instill within your stakeholders kind of that ethos that, you know, a lot of the stuff that we're testing is going to be flat, but we are going to eventually see some wins or some losses, which is going to kind of shift our focus and steer us in the right direction. I put a book recommendation up here. Hacking Growth is a really great book. It definitely taught me a lot about testing. So that's definitely a good one. And I put it on this one because that kind of book dispelled the myth that all my tests would win on this one for sure. The third myth in here is that you should test everything. This is definitely a trap that lots of people fall into. I was very lucky that I worked with a very experienced A/B test or experimentation consultant for about 6 weeks when we were getting our program off the ground. But I definitely got into this mindset of, now that I have this A/B testing kind of process, I should test absolutely everything. The small things, the big things, the copy changes, the color changes, absolutely everything. But like I said in the previous slide, when we're talking about things not making an impact, you actually sometimes do need to just fall back on that product intuition and that product sense to make a decision about something and then go forward with that decision and not actually test it. Some changes aren't worth testing. And the way that we handled that was creating kind of a calculator. So hopefully you can all see, I'm sorry if it's a little bit small, that block or that grid at the bottom of this slide. This is something that we created at BBC Maestro, and it was really for us to be able to decide what we should test and what actually isn't worth testing. And that was always the way that we built that out was this kind of final point here that I wrote, which is around biasing towards disruption. So what I mean by that is that anything too subtle, anything that, because it's so subtle, it's not going to score very high on our calculator, we just decided not to test. And we would go with the decision that I would make with Hannah, my designer, on what was the best user experience and what we felt was the best thing that we should roll out. So you can see here on this grid, the way that we kind of scored our tests was across this criteria at the top. Some of that's related to the potential of the test. So how much potential does this test have to win, to have an impact? The importance of the test. So is it critical to a business need? Is it in a particular page that we know is really high traffic? And then also the ease of the test. Ease was really, really important to us. I work in a really tiny team. We couldn't possibly spend weeks and weeks building tests to roll them out to not see a difference. So we had to really, really be really smart with the time that we had, the team that we had, to make sure that we were putting the right things out. So that's the third myth. The fourth myth in here is around traffic. So there's definitely lots of perceptions around needing lots of traffic to test. There is no denying that having loads of traffic really helps you test. And the reason for that is the more traffic you have, the more eyes you have on a test, the more quickly you're going to be able to say if something's having an impact. It's purely around sample sizes on this one. So if you have, I don't know, 100 visitors to a part of your website every day, it's going to take you longer to see a statistical change in your results than if you had 100,000 visits to that page in a day. That's a massive sample size, and it's going to really get you where you want to be quicker. Lots of us don't have that many users using our products every day. When we first started testing, we were working with quite small numbers at times. It's definitely a challenge, but it's not impossible to test. You just have to realize, you just have to work with that reality. Using a calculator, like we saw in the previous slide, really helps with that. So we could really bias towards having an impact and disruption, but also focusing on really high traffic areas of our product, like the header sections, for example, like before the scroll part of a page, home pages versus kind of more discrete pages on a site. Looking at things like scroll depth to kind of discern that from the page is really important for this one. And it can be done. It's definitely not impossible. I've definitely spoke with some people who are more cynical about this one and kind of say, oh, you can't test, you don't have enough traffic. I fundamentally don't agree with that. I think you can always A/B test. You just have to kind of adjust and pivot when you need to. Myth 5. I think this is my final myth. Yeah, it is. Myth 5 is around tooling. So kind of linked again to the fact that I work in quite a small team. There's often a perception that you need some sort of really expensive A/B testing tool to get started with A/B testing. Again, I don't agree with this one. Testing tools are great, but they can be really expensive, quite difficult to implement, and they also can overcomplicate things a little bit. Right now, we work with SiteSpect. That's an A/B testing tool, and it's a great tool, but we're definitely not using it to its full potential, and we're spending money to not use it to its full potential because we're kind of locked into a contract with them. If you have a team, and maybe some of you do have teams of huge teams, and you're going to work on big testing programs where there's going to be 15, 20, 30 tests live at once, a tool like SiteSpect is really useful. For me and my team, we're only really working with about 3 maximum tests at once. And a lot of the data analysis that you need to do with testing, you can do in other data tools. So for example, we use Mixpanels. It's really possible to do A/B testing in Mixpanel. If anyone does want to chat to me a little bit about that, please do. It's something that Mixpanel helped us with, but we've got kind of frameworks in place now to do that. I think what's really important here is the second point. So leaning on your more technical peers can really help you figure out the best way to test in quite an agile, scrappy way if you just want to get stuff started. And I don't always think that that's dependent on the type of like technical infrastructure or tooling that you have. There's definitely other things that you can do here around kind of gathering your own data, using the data that you have to really get your testing program off the ground. So those are 5 myths that I wanted to dispel before we get into actually starting A/B testing and what that could look like for you, and hopefully give you some nice kind of tips and tricks that maybe could get you started on that. And I think maybe it's important to note here that I don't think that necessarily it's always should or has to be the product person that's driving an A/B testing program. As designers, I'm sure that there's been many times where you've created different versions of things or kind of looked at different user experiences for particular parts of your product or problems that you're trying to solve, and you really wish that you could test that with a kind of group of people. And sometimes that small scale testing can be great to give you that nice bold feedback or confirm some things, but A/B testing can also be really powerful on purely user experience design to see kind of how people use your product. So it's definitely something that I think can come from anyone in the business and can be driven by anyone in the business, as long as you kind of have the right mindset when it comes to testing things. So how can you get started? This part of the talk is hopefully going to kind of break down some steps that you could go through to get started with A/B testing, so that now that you're kind of aware of some of those myths, and they've been kind of debunked in your head, you can start to think about what an A/B test, even just one A/B test to get you started, could look like within your organization. So first of all, the most important thing you should do before you're starting any kind of A/B testing program or thinking about A/B testing is think about the goal that you are trying to achieve, and then the metric that you're trying to change. And secondary to that, establish your baseline. If you don't have a baseline, obviously it's going to be really hard to know if your test is having an impact. But if you establish that key metric, make sure it's something that you are measuring and you can measuring, you have that baseline, then you're in a really good position to start testing. There's also kind of a secondary point to this around kind of secondary metrics, I guess. Often when I first started A/B testing, I have a particular example of a test that we launched that was to increase checkout conversion. So the amount of people that go into the funnel, getting more of them to check out and actually pay for their product at the end of it. And I guess to caveat that, a lot of my testing has been on conversion rate optimization, but that's not the only thing that you can test against. That was particularly related to checkout conversion. And we launched something that really simplified the checkout flow. And it was great. It performed really well. It gave us a small uplift. I think it was about 5% uplift, but that's still a good result. And it meant that we were kind of focusing on the right direction. But a metric that I hadn't looked at that is really important to us is newsletter signups. And newsletter signups are great for us because often people will come to our site. We have quite a high price product. They would often not quite be ready to purchase. So they leave their email, maybe hoping they're going to get a discount code, which they would if they'd signed up. And also it means that we can kind of target them with marketing afterwards. What this test has done, it simplified that checkout flow so much that we'd actually removed quite a key part of that flow, which was around entering their email and starting to set up their account. And that metric completely tanked for us. That was not a metric that we wanted to sacrifice. Like I said, it's a really important one for us. So it meant that although I had a win in this test, I actually didn't have kind of an overall win and couldn't go ahead with rolling out the change because it had affected that secondary metric that's really important. So you have to be really aware of those other metrics that you care about and make sure that you're also measuring those so that you're not impacting them badly. Another thing on this one, sometimes it can feel really daunting. Let's say you're working with conversion and you're saying, okay, we're going to increase conversion, and your boss says, okay, how much are you going to increase it by? And you're like, I don't know, maybe like 10%, maybe double it, like really kind of finger in the air goals. You're not really sure of the potential here. Something that can be really useful when you're really just starting out is to set a goal around just launching tests. So just to try and build that momentum, build some experience in your team, particularly if you're new to it. When we started A/B testing, all of us were new to it. All of our engineering team. Hannah, our designer, was completely new to it. We didn't know what we were doing, and we set a goal of launching 5 tests in a 6-week period, and really tried to just hammer towards that so that we could build up that experience, learn from some of the fails, and really just get that momentum going, so that we could then kind of run a bit faster later on. So know what metric you're trying to change and establish your baseline. Once you've done that, and you've got some buy-in, you're feeling good, you've got that metric, you're ready to go. The next thing that is important to do is figure out how you're going to test. So figure out if you're going to use a tool. Some of you may have amazing big budgets and you can use a tool like SiteSpect or Optimizely or some of these other tools. Great if you can. Obviously, like, those tools make it a little bit easier sometimes, but there can be an implementation cost to that. Or maybe you're going to kind of bootstrap it yourself and you're going to not use a tool, and you're going to kind of buckle together some of the technical tooling that you have and some of the data tooling you have and kind of create a process out of that. And then also secondary to that, any other tools that you might need. So if you need kind of, like I said, that calculator, if you need project management tools to get things set up, just all of the kind of organizational stuff that you want to set up, that this is the time to obviously really do that. Another thing that's really important here is establishing or running an AA test to check everything's working okay. And that's purely just a test where you deploy 2 variants, an A variant and a B variant, but your B variant is actually just your A variant. They're exactly the same. And what you want to see is that the data that comes through is exactly the same on both sides. So you can show that the data is tracking correctly. There's kind of no difference. You shouldn't be seeing any difference. There shouldn't be something weird going on under the surface, which is deploying things differently. You want to see that traffic is even if you're running like a 50-50 test, and just kind of make sure that everything's going. So it's kind of a bit of a false door test, if you like. There's no change in the variants, but you're going to split traffic between these 2 variants to make sure everything's working. And also try and just keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate things for your first go. Don't get too hung up in tools or calculators or any of these things. The most important thing is just to get something simple off the ground that you believe in, that maybe you've wanted to test for a while, and then you'll start to build that experience and build kind of the process as you go. I think is really useful. And for us, our process and a lot of the tools that we were using changed a lot over the 6-month period that we were testing. It changed because we learned that some things weren't working. It changed because we wanted to get more efficient as a team. It changed in lots of different ways. And obviously we all know, working in digital, that is very normal, and it's the same with testing. We need to be really open to that as well. The third thing, so you've got your baseline, you've got your metric, you figured out how you're going to test, and you're starting to think about what that first test is. The next thing to do, and hopefully you'll have already engaged your stakeholders a little bit up to this point, but definitely start kind of making sure that you're bringing your stakeholders on the journey with you and keeping them really engaged. Don't test in secret. Don't kind of test and not tell anyone, and hope that no one notices, so that if it's a fail, you can just pretend that it never happened. Keep it really open. Share the learnings, share the wins, share the failures. Keep it kind of, make sure that you're building that culture of experimentation from that nice early point, and bringing your stakeholders on the journey. And also, just from an idea generation perspective, sometimes it can be really hard when you're figuring out all of this other stuff, how we're going to test all of our metrics, to get into that nice creative space that you want to be in when you're thinking about solving problems and ideas. So definitely bring people in on that part of the process. Talk about the tests that you have, talk about the ideas that you have, and get some of those ideas from other people. Sometimes the best ideas come from people outside of your team. I know that I've tested some really amazing suggestions from our customer service team, for example. They're always spending time with our customers, and often have a lot of insight that we can sometimes miss. And I really love getting people involved in that kind of ideation part of the process. And then you're going to decide what you want to test first. So we've touched on this a little bit, talking about the problem that we're trying to solve and our prioritization framework. Like I said, you want to keep it really simple. You want to keep it really refined for this first test. So trying to test one thing per test is really, really important. It's definitely a trap that I still sometimes fall into, where you get a bit carried away and overexcited, and actually you want to change everything on the page and move everything around and mix everything up. But the trouble with that is if you bundle too much into one test and it wins or it loses, you don't know what has won and what has lost. It could be all of those things together. Great, you roll it out, but now you're probably a little bit scared to change anything because you think that it's that kind of full package. And now we're kind of back where we started, in that we're a little bit strapped with what to change, because we know this is working, but we're not quite sure what's working. So let's just keep it as it is and not change anything. So you want to try and, as much as it's hard and you have to resist the temptation sometimes to put all these ideas in one, it's often important to not bundle too much in. So if you want to change the position of a button or the copy of that button, try and do that independently, without kind of changing the rest of the copy on the page. Another button to the left hand side, changing an image here, kind of doing everything at once, because it makes it really hard to know what's won and what's lost after it. And sometimes in that example where it loses, now you've wiped all these ideas off the table, but actually one of those ideas could have been really powerful. It's just not powerful within this group of ideas, and it's just not powerful within this package. And you can get into a bit of a situation where you're like unpicking a test. Now you're back at the start, just testing all of those individual bits anyway. So that one's really, really important to mention. And then finally, you've got that first test running. It's nice and simple. You've got one really clear thing that you're testing. Your stakeholders are really bought in kind of to the whole experimentation that you want to do. The next thing to do is to just sit back and be patient with the results that come in. I have a rule that I don't check a test within the first 24 hours that it's gone live, because I've got overexcited too many times by seeing a test that I think has absolutely changed the game. And then I come back to it another day later, and actually now that it's got more traffic, everything's kind of flattened out and it's not been as impactful as I like. So make sure that you remember that getting statistical significant results takes time. It's not to say that test won't be a win if you saw it was a win really quickly. But sometimes you have to kind of let a test like marinate a little bit, let the traffic go up, look at the data a little bit more, unpick it a little bit before you can really say if it's a win. There's nothing worse than telling your boss that you've done amazingly with this test, which this is a mistake that I've made about 6 hours after it launched, to come back a few days later and actually it's now not winning, it's now actually failing, and I have to now unpick what I said before. So definitely give things a little bit of time and be really patient. Another thing is, don't be disheartened when you're only seeing maybe tiny improvements. That is A/B testing, unfortunately. It's really, really rare to launch an A/B test and suddenly your test variant is giving you a 50% increase in this metric that you've been trying to change for 5 years. If it was easy, you probably would have changed it in that 5 years that you've been trying to change it. It's not often going to be one test that's going to do that. But what you have to remember is that all of those little tests and little improvements that you make are eventually going to compound into some bigger change. And you're going to feel really confident in the change and the impact of that change because you've been so measured and so kind of curious and careful with the kind of testing that you do. And then also, finally, I'm sure all of you do this, but just continue to speak to your customers even when you are testing. So sometimes I've been in situations where we've launched quite a few A/B tests and we've not seen anything amazing come out of them over kind of a month or two. And actually, it can be really powerful at that point to kind of take stock, have some of those conversations with your customers again, kind of re-ground yourself in the problems that you're trying to solve and kind of the voice of the customer, so that you can come to things with kind of a fresh mindset and come back to kind of testing or change some of your thinking around testing. So to round up on that, choose your metric and establish your baseline. work out how you're going to test things. Don't overcomplicate it. You don't have to have a fancy tool. You can bootstrap things together within your team and just see how it goes. Tell people that you're going to test things. Don't test in secret. Tell your stakeholders, introduce them to this experimentation that you want to do, and kind of create some of that culture shift from within yourself and within your own team. Decide what you want to test first. Keep it really simple. Do that AA test to make everything's working, and then test some things that maybe you've been curious about for a while. And then finally, be really patient and be really open to any results that you get, and kind of make sure that you're taking the learnings, but still remembering that it's really important to always speak to your customers and keep their kind of their insights and their problems front of mind. And that's it. Thank you, everyone. I feel like I rattled through that a little bit, but I think last time I went over the time that I had allotted. So this time I tried to be a bit quicker. But yeah, I'm sorry if it was quick, but hopefully there's some questions from people now. So yeah, does anyone have any questions?
Rebecca, thank you so much. That's been great. Don't you worry, we're gonna unpick it all now. I have a whole line of questions.
Oh, nice.
All right, so let me see. How am I gonna do this? I'm sure I can see the line of people. Oh, open queue, yes. Yay. I know you got in there first, but I'm gonna head over to Lisa. Sorry, I'll come back to you, I promise. Lisa, for her question. Over to you, Lisa.
Great.
Hi there. Thanks. Really interesting presentation. I guess as a user researcher, I'm curious in your experience how A/B testing works alongside user research. I've seen it in the past used instead of user research. Do you see how do you see that fitting in, and how does it fit in well and perhaps badly?
Yeah, I would never say, from my experience and the way that I work, that A/B testing is like a replacement for user research at all. Oftentimes the data can only give you so much of the story, and speaking to customers or your people that you're building products for is really, really important. I think that A/B testing can be a great tool for user researchers and vice versa, in terms of like, if we're not sure why a test isn't working correctly, I'll often then start doing some user research, or we're kind of hammering home on a particular point quite a lot, not seeing anything, not understand why it's not working. And that's where user research comes in to help us start to really unpick it and get those qual insights that we can have. So I would never say that it's a replacement. I think that they both should work hand in hand. And I think that like A/B testing can be really invaluable to user researchers and vice versa.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to agree with that, in the sense that when I, in my experience, I've seen lots of A/B testing that show no results really,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And at which point you're like, this maybe isn't the tool, and you need to think about, one, do you need to be testing this? Is it something that even matters?
Exactly. Yeah, and like digging deeper, right? It can be quite surface sometimes. A lot of that data, it can still leave you guessing, but actually there's nothing like hearing from people on what they think. So yeah, I definitely agree.
And sorry to privilegedly, as a facilitator, chip in, but for me, user research informs what kind of test to run, right? Otherwise, you'll be shooting in the dark a little bit. I mean, you can optimize this bit here, whereas really your problems are down here. So for me, one informs the other in a way. So yeah, arguments against research, stakeholders are very creative in their way to argue against research, but in my experience, certainly A/B testing doesn't get any near in terms of the quality of the insights that you get from qualitative research. Super. Thank you so much, Lisa. Thanks, Rebecca. Over to Kirsty.
We can't hear you, Kirsty. I think you're muted.
And I'm so glad I'm not the only one who did it.
Sorry, I did that already today at work. Thanks so much, Rebecca. I found that really insightful. I've never done any A/B testing before. I'm working as a UX designer for an organisation that hasn't ever really done it much before either. So it's kind of the blind leading the blind a little bit. And so we're currently going through like a journey of kind of a conversion journey on our website. It's not working, loads of dropouts, and we want to and obviously stakeholders have got an opinion of what they think, and obviously we want to get some evidence, and so I wondered specifically, have you ever worked with Hotjar? Because we're looking at like getting something that will give us that kind of further insights, but I know that they also do A/B testing, and I wondered whether you'd ever used it before, whether it's something for a small, like we don't have loads of traffic to our website, so whether we need like something like what you were talking about, site spec or something. I just wondered what you thought.
So I've used Hotjar, but not for A/B testing, but we do use Hotjar to inform a lot of our tests, and I do know that they have an A/B testing function. The way that we use it is like watching like replays of customers and looking at kind of high kind of click areas on pages, stuff like that, more of that kind of like product analytics on the page. And that helps us sometimes to figure out, okay, this area is really hot on the page, we should focus there, or this bit of copy gets loads of clicks, why are people clicking there, and those kind of things. It definitely helps us. I haven't used it as an A/B testing tool, but I do like Hotjar, and I can imagine that their tool would be pretty user friendly because the product is very user friendly. I would say it would be great like to set up a call with them and ask some of those questions around like, what do they expect from traffic, how much support do they provide, what does the implementation look like, because sometimes the implementation, because they need so much of your data and so much access to your site, it can be quite tricky. So it's definitely something to watch out for. But if you already are connected to it, then hopefully it's a little bit easier.
I think we're kind of on a free plan, and we want to go to a paid plan. But nice. A/B testing is kind of something we're dipping our toes into at the moment. We're interested in visualization of, because you've got Google Analytics and stuff, but we want to look at the visualization of the the heat mapping and stuff like that. But we saw that they did A/B testing, and it just made me think I've got a call with them tomorrow, so I just wondered whether, obviously they're going to try and sell me everything, but I just wanted to go with kind of like a little bit of insight from anyone who used it, you in particular obviously, but it, like I said, A/B testing is something we're just dipping our toes into, so I don't think we're going to go to a platform specifically for A/B testing yet. Probably baby steps, start with Hotjar and see how we get on with them. But
sure. Well, like happy to chat about it more if you're getting started. We like I said, we were on that same journey, we hadn't done anything before, so please like feel free to reach out to me afterwards.
Brilliant, thank you. And such good tips as well, because I have to say, I was thinking I'm going to test that and I'm going to prove that I'm right, and now I'm thinking, okay, just it probably isn't going to show that, but I'm going to do it.
Definitely do it anyway.
Thank you.
Nice.
Awesome. And just on Hotjar, I think they have been recently acquired by Content Square, which is a massive like product insight platform. So if they're trying to sell you something, it could be in that space, and they have heaps of tools that can help you understand what users are doing on site, where the frictions are, and so on. So they might have something really useful to help you guys started. Super. Kat, over to you.
Hi, Rebecca. Thank you for the talk. It was really, really good, really insightful. My question is to do with smaller companies. So if a company hasn't got a lot of traffic, and obviously you can do testing or with a smaller sample, or you can increase the length of time that you have for that test, but it depends on how many people obviously are coming to your website. But would you do longer tests, and how long in your experience is probably the cutoff point? Because obviously you can take a year to do a test.
I often, and it may not be right, but if I'm not seeing anything after like 4 weeks, I will end the test and just kind of chop it down to like, we didn't see any statistical impact, or we did, or we didn't see any statistical impact within this time, and we are going to shift focus onto something else at this point. Booking.com have an open source calculator, which I can find after this, and maybe I'll share it with V, and then she can share it with all of you. But it's a nice calculator because you can put in kind of your daily traffic, and the kind of impact that you would expect to see from a test. Or if you have a test live and you're seeing a certain impact, you can put in the impact that you're seeing, and it will tell you how long you need to keep that test live for you to get a statistical result on the test. That can be really powerful, because sometimes it will say things like 6 months, and you're like, well, I'm not gonna sit here at my desk for 6 months just waiting for this test to do something, if anything. And even then, that's not a guarantee, right? It could swing the other way, or it could just never reach that point. That percentage could just keep going down and down. So I tend to, the most important thing I think with that one is, if you are seeing a small result, do some sort of calculation like that to see how long you would need to keep this test running, and that will empower you to make a decision. But also, again, just trying to bias towards as much disruption on the page, or as much disruption to the user experience as possible, so that you'll see a big swing either way, right? You want it either way. The worst is a flat test. So just trying to be really, like I say, like mess it up, flip it on its head, and try something quite different. And then you will hopefully see something a lot quicker. And sometimes that doesn't even happen. We launched a test on Tuesday that I was so sure was going to have a negative impact, but my boss Lily was like, it's going to be positive, and I was like, it's going to be negative. I know this is going to be negative. And we are two days in now. We've got a lot of traffic to the page because we're in sale at the moment, and it's just completely flat. There's just no change either way. And we were both so sure in our individual viewpoints, but that's like the beauty and the curse of A/B testing. It kind of shows you a lot of the things that sometimes you are a little bit blind to seeing.
Thank you so much.
I'll just ask Rebecca then, if it is flat, do you just leave it then? So you've basically not proven one way or the other. Do you just think, well, that's it, then just leave it as it is? Or do you have to go?
Yeah, so if it's like this one is completely flat, we have ended the test. There was a few changes in some of the like user behavior on the page that is quite interesting to us. So it's pushed more users to a certain point in our page, which is interesting to us and might show us something. But yeah, if we're seeing absolutely nothing, I would often kind of try and cut my losses there and move on to the next test that we can maybe have, or potentially adjust the test slightly. So end that test, do something a little bit different, maybe more impactful, more disruptive, and then launch a new test.
Super. Thank you so much. Paula, over to you.
No worries.
Oh, no, Paula pressed the wrong button. It's one of those days.
No worries.
Lana, over to you. You just got promoted in my queue. Rachel dropped them. Paula dropped, unfortunately. Paula, I'll come back to you.
Okay. Is it Lana?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Oh no, can't hear you now.
I think you're on mute now.
Ow. No.
Yeah,
Yeah?
got you now.
Okay, cool. I think we've got a bit of the lurgies today. Okay, yeah, thanks very much. Really good, and great to hear. I've had some really mixed experience with A/B testing. The first couple of organisations, I worked for small fintechs, at various stages of development, and we sort of did in the UX part, we did the testing. Then I went and worked for a much larger organisation which had a much more mature user research and UX team, and it was always done by the product people, and they were very much driven by the metrics, because that's how their bonuses and things were paid. And I felt at times they didn't give those tests long enough to run. As soon as they showed anything negative, they'll say, no, we're stopping it. And the other thing, you were saying about making sure that everyone knows about the test, I thought that's a really good point, because I often felt that sometimes a test was failing because someone has done a change that we're not aware of somewhere in the business, somewhere else. So the A that we're comparing is not really the A that we thought it was. So, that was something great. that you said. And I think one of the things I'll take away from this is running an AA test, because I've never done that. Really good tip. So that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I totally
Oh,
agree.
no worries. Thank you.
I agree with you, Lauren. I thought the tip on the AA test was really good. Yeah, I never
Oh,
thought
great.
about it, but yeah, it's like a little light bulb moment. Oh yeah, of course we can do that.
Amazing.
Good job. Paula, back to you. What happened there? Did you press the wrong button?
Yeah, I think my microphone wasn't on, but it is now. So yeah, thanks for the info. It was really interesting. And yeah, I suppose I'm quite new to UX, and I'm in my first role at the moment. And I would be interested in the examples of the kind of things that you would test. So I know you said about clickable areas and you know, areas of that you think are high traffic. So I just wondered if, you know, as you've tested, do you have any examples of tests that have really stood out to you, and you know, you've gained a lot of info back from them? Oh, Rebecca, I think you're on mute now.
Sorry. I think some of the biggest things that we're testing at the moment is it's quite specific to like some of the user problems that we have. But I think something that I really have tried to focus on in the last year or so is testing kind of the users first. Like the way I try and think about it is like the users first like 5 seconds on a page. Like what do they see within that 5 seconds? Sometimes maybe even 10 seconds on the page, and testing those things. So what I'll often do is ask someone in the team to look at a test for me, and if they haven't spotted the thing that I'm trying to test within that time, I tend to kind of move on or look at something else. I think sometimes even if something you feel like it's really obvious, you're almost too close to it. So thinking about like the initial impact or the initial part of the page that you're trying to test, I think is really powerful. So yeah, I'm very sorry, but I have to run.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. That was useful.
No worries.
Rebecca, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've learned a lot, and thank you for all the wonderful tips.
Amazing.
Rebecca has to run for a plane. She's at the airport. So usually we like to, you know, stay around and chat for a bit longer. But this time around, we're gonna be spot on time. But Rebecca, thank you again for joining. It's been great to have you.
Amazing. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Again, just to say, if any one of you wants to deliver a talk or has any questions about Ladies at UX, please get in touch. Where me, Rachel, and Kat are more than happy to help in any way that we can. We'll be off for Christmas. I think everybody's off for Christmas, but we will try and organize a face-to-face event in January. So I will keep you posted. It will be fantastic if we can get together again. We had a really good fun during the summer social, so we're really trying to replicate that for a winter social, cozy social. But we'll announce that in the new year. So yeah, fantastic to see everybody. Hope you have a lovely evening.
Thank you for organizing. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Kat.
Bye.